Right, here we are, St Peter's Church in Roydon.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please stand?
This afternoon we're going to get a number of tributes to David and family and friends. We're going to give them Greg and John, Peter, Michael and of course Joe. So I'd like to invite now Greg, who the first of tributes, to come and share his thoughts on David.
I first met Dave in August 1976 when I opened a small office next to his business premises, Wipers in Ware, Bullock Street. We connected immediately as business neighbours and soon discovered we had an incredibly similar sense of humour. I remember to this day the joke he told me on that first meeting. I would like to tell it now in his memory. Dave loved Jewish humour, which he enjoyed all his life, with the many, many friends he had from his early days selling on the markets from Romford to Hartford. So Dave, if you're listening, the Jewish man was crossing the road when he was suddenly knocked down by a car. As he lay in the road injured, a kind woman came over, rolled up her coat and put it under his head. She said to him kindly, "Are you comfortable?" "Yes," he said, "thank God I've got 2 shots." That was Dave. Dave will be laughing now, just as he laughed his way through life, enjoying every minute. As I said, I opened a new branch office in Ware next to Dave 48 years ago. Christine was my secretary then, later to become my lovely wife. She's here with me today to pay our deepest respects to an outstanding man, one of a kind, our special friend Dave. Dave was also special to our daughter Charlotte, who called him the Magic Man, because of the wonderful children's tricks and games he taught her when she was young. Dave had so many enthralling stories of his early days as a trader, selling car accessories and car aerials to Alan, now Lord Sugar, and supplying soft toys to many notorious characters in the East End of London. That was the only time he really felt afraid. No forgiveness there if you sold him anything that was substandard. Dave employed outworkers to make the soft toys at home. He made me cry with laughter when he recounted the quality of the stuff they produced. Teddy bears where the eyes would pop out if you squeezed them, and the legs that were different lengths. We did laugh at his exploits. Humour was truly his gift. As we all know, together with his sons, he went on to build a very successful manufacturing business in Romford. Dave was so proud of his boys, and even more proud of his lovely wife Joan, who raised them with him. Dave would always talk fondly of Joan's love of her acting career, and would tell me excitedly of her upcoming appearances on stage and on TV. Dave met Joan when she was 16 years old, and he loved telling the story of when they were courting, and he used to visit her at the theatrical lodgings she shared with her Radar colleagues. He would knock on the door, and hear nervous screeching and alarm. "Who's that? Who is it? Who's that? Then it's only Dave. So he walked in to be met with, "Hi Dave," from all these scantily clad girls who were oblivious to Dave's eyes popping out of his head. Dave Reynolds also met Shirley Eaton, later Bond girl and Goldfinger, and Joan's roommate, now Dame Joan Collins, I understand. Dave was an extremely generous man in all ways. He financed the initial planning application and donated early costs to the charity that went on to build the well-known Woodson Park Sports Centre in Ware, and continued to support the facility for many years as a board member. He served as a district councillor for East Arts District Council and on the Lee Valley Region Park Authority. He was not at all your stereotype councillor and loved to ask the awkward questions at committee, especially finance, where he was chairman. He was very proud to have been made a friend of the City of London, and he often talked about buying a flock of sheep so he could exercise his right to herd them across London Bridge without paying the toll. I remember when we jointly funded a sentimental trip for a dear old lady of 104. She was the grandmother-in-law of one of Dave's employees. She had expressed a long-held wish to revisit Roydon, where she had lived as a child. Her father was in the British Army and had been garrisoned there. The intriguing part of the story was that as a 12-year-old she had danced for Queen Victoria when the Queen visited the barracks on Roydon. She had even held the Queen's hand. And also our dear old lady, 104, had never flown before. Dave and I arranged the flights and everything for the close family to stay on the island. But before we knew it, the press had got hold of the story and Channel 4 News was at the airport to film it. We were bumped by the airline to the next flight, so Channel 4 would have our seats for the film crew. Needless to say, when Dave and I arrived at Albany, the local press and the mayor joined the circus and we moved on to the town. We did watch the story later on Channel 4 News, but needless to say, we could only see mere glimpses of ourselves in the background. There was no mention of our involvement. We did feel a bit miffed. For many years, Dave and I enjoyed breakfast every Friday at Van Hayes Garden Centre. We would discuss all the world's problems and of course come up with all the answers. We were often joined by other friends who knowing our weekly venue would drop by and join us. Our breakfast meetings continued even after Dave suffered a stroke and had to use a wheelchair. He still managed to get there by hiring a taxi. Those meetings meant a lot to both of us. Sadly, this has all come to an end. Goodbye, Dave.
Dad's three greatest loves have always been family, work and Freemasonry, not necessarily in that order. However, I would say he'd be wondering what we're all doing here and who's actually running the office. Anyway, Dad proposed me to follow him into Masonry, and I've been elected for honour to give a brief summary of this important part of his life. Dad was proposed into the Bartison Lodge in 1961 by his father-in-law Paddy, just a few years after his marriage to Mum. Dad took to Masonry like a duck to water. In 1970, was proud to be installed Master of Bartison. Back in those days, the highlight of a Master's year was his ladies' night. I'll never forget, I was only about 9 or 10, being taken out by all my brothers and fitted my first smart suit, shirt, bow tie, and frilly shirt ruffle, we look great, and travelled up to the Park Lane Hotel in London for the evening. What a do, the 5-course meal, cabaret, band, and loads of speeches and toasts. I'll never forget Mum and Dad breaking protocol, because as Dad stood to oppose the toast to the ladies, I also stood up, and they argued across the room, and decided the toast should be changed to a toast to the ladies and gentlemen. They were certainly ahead of the curve when it came to equality. The Buzzing Lodge was a London lodge, and expected for Masons to practice the ritual weekly. It was difficult for a busy father and businessman to travel regularly to London to attend the Lodge of Instruction, to practice, so a group of Essex Masons, Dad included, decided to form a school of instruction locally to rehearse. After a few years, as they all got on so well, they decided to actually form their own lodge. Not as easy as it sounds, as you need several past masters, lodge sponsors, as well as acceptance from Grand Lodge. They eventually got the go-ahead, but needed a name for this new lodge. And as they left the Maypole Inn, that was in Chigwell, Dad had the inspiration of the name of the lodge the Barnaby Lodge. Why Barnaby Lodge? A large chunk of the Dickens novel by that name was actually set in the pub, and Dickens was reputed to have written it while staying there. If you read it, you'll also find links to masonry through the Gordon Rides. So the lodge was named, the symbol of the lodge became a maypole after the inn, and Dad became a family, a true proud moment. Shortly after I left home, Dad asked if I could come and stay at his house, as he was going away with Mum, and I could look after everything. Whilst there, a letter arrived for Dad from Grand Lodge. He asked me if I could open it. I was so proud to find that Dad had been promoted to Grand Office, which is the greatest honour in masonry, and I have the happy memory of telling him. There are very few Grand Officers in England, and Dad was the first and still the only Grand Lodge in the Barney Lodge, a great honour for him and the Lodge. The Barney Lodge was founded in 1974. It never had a lodge banner, so when the members decided to address this, Dad stepped up and offered to pay for it. Shortly after, Dad had his stroke, but the banner proposed was still acted on, and when it arrived, the delegation from the lodge attended Dad at home and gave their own private presentation. Such a shame that the official presentation was given by an official provincial delegation team in the lodge Dad loved cannot be attended by him now. However, his last Masonic act was one of happiness and pride. In the lodge, the banner will act as a constant reminder of him to all the members. Just to finish, I'd like to read 2 short pieces of the Masonic funeral address and recite a short section of the address that Dad used to give in to the brethren of his, the Barnaby Lodge. Death is nothing at all. I've only slipped away into the next room. I am I, and you are you. Whatever you were to each other, which we are still. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way you always used. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed. As we judged, we enjoyed together. There is a calm for those who weep, a rest for weary pilgrims found. They softly lie and sweetly sleep, low in the ground, low in the ground. The storm that racks the winter sky, no more disturbs their deep repose. In summer evening's latest sigh that shuts the rose, The sun is like a spark of fire, a transient meteor in the sky. The soul, immortal as its sigh, shall never die, And the brother, who has thus far discharged his duties of Freemason, may patiently await the arrival of the dying throng, that awful change which we must all experience. and the soul takes wing to the boundless and unexplored expanse. The great architect of the universe then say, "It is God finished," and admit us to the grand knowledge above, where the divinity in time will cease, and the glorious eternity must open to our view.
I've been asked to say a few words about my father's business and exploits and some of the things he taught us. Anyway, father, after leaving the army with his half a crown, decided he wanted to be his own boss. Borrowed £60 from his dad to buy a Roydon, purchased food, drinks and whatever came to hand and started trading at the market. As trade increased, he began towns to expand his trade, and he alone re-established Ware Market. When talking about his market days, we always hear, "No starch, I could only buy starch substitute." When I worked with my brother's doll, we sold China dolls with mould defects, hole in the heads, so we sold these as money boxes. A brief spent at the racetrack as a toad, and was the only toad not to earn any money. This sort of taught us a lesson we shouldn't be gambling. Buying stock from the East End of the 50s led to meetings with Billy Hill, a notorious London gangster who controlled a lot of trade in the East End. Dad loved to tell the story when he was in Billy's East End lock-up, surrounded by Billy's minders and being asked to be a frontman for selling stock, to be a fall guy in the legal trade. Luckily, father was licensed to carry a Wolford PPK handgun, which he kept in a shoulder holster. He had the guns used in large amount of cash he carried. No credit cards were available in those days. At the table, he pulled out the gun and removed the knife and tossed it across the table. Now, David, replied, "We don't need any trouble." That carried on trading as normal. Having contacts on the market led to his first step into manufacturing. As Greg said, produced fur toys, which he sold to other fairgrounds to be given away as prizes. He also manufactured wooden kids' toys and prams. In the 1960s, father opened his first shop at Elm Park called Dayburn's. In the shop, a sack full of pearl buttons, millions, and at the time they had no value, so he donated them to a farmer who asked them to be left at his gate. He kept an article from the National Park paper we still have today. As 2 years later, the demand and value of pearl buttons soared in price. You know what the man felt when he scratched the computer holding bitcoins on the hard drive, purchased for 3 pence just before their value took off. And then there was a large volume of Christmas balls, and we learned never to undersell a best-selling product and always keep receipts. Also a lesson learned was it was too good to be true when he purchased a huge amount of mixed cards, birthday, Christmas, from Don Lerwin, the founder of Clinton Cards, at an extremely competitive price. Problem, they came with envelopes. We always managed to find a buyer. Other business ventures in the 60s was coin collecting. Not many people knew he was one of the UK's largest collectors, collecting from the bank bags and bags and half crowns. I went to work with him one day in the Ware shop when father popped out and returned half hour later with his E-type jag laden to the ground with a weight of coins. In his spare time, he sorted out the coins, dated 1990, up to 1990, 93% silver in one pile, 1920 to 46, 50% silver content in another pile, and returned the rest of the bag. Next day, another carload. At one time in the late 80s, allowing for inflation, the value was up to £36 for a silver coin, £1. Selling bikes soon expanded to car and bike cash and carry. Using money from the cash and carry, more freehold shops followed. With the expansion of the cash and carry, led to manufacturing card sharp leads and relined car brake shoes in an available space of the garden greenhouse. He dealt with that sugar purchasing car areas, later importing in 1976 his own stock from Taiwan from Jordan Chan, aka Mr. Chanet, who we still deal with to this day. In the 1970s, he also saw a market for wiper blade rubber wheels, made of wiper blade mould and ranged the rubber arranged with rubber factory mills to produce on his behalf. His customers include Woolworths with over 1,200 stores, Talbot Cars and the Highlander. The expansion to produce car polish was not as successful as the Ways, and after producing a very similar product to the market leader, which was threatened with court action over copyright. He used his charms and managed to settle out of court and still came out on top. He always loved the markets and helped arrange my first market pitch in 1980 with an old friend, Jim Coleman, from his lodge. Agreed I paid $1,600 for the stock and pitch, and then nearly every Saturday he came to the stall and always gave a hand. We soon expanded the cash and carry while Father carried on with the production of white plates. He listed his shops to the managers, and with the farm paid, he was in the envious position of being able to retire at an early age. But this did not stop him turning up at the warehouse to help unload shipping containers. Another thing he did was with Glenn Hoddle, Spurs player and ex-England manager. Glenn's early years was playing for Spurs decided to open some sport shops, and Father advised him on when the best occasion. Glenn returned the favour to open our large store in Harlow. And now this leads to our largest supplier of oil, sold at discount prices below our cost to a nearby cash and carry competitor. Down the road from the cash and carry was an old closed factory unit, and this was up for sale. Father contacted the owner, who informed he already had a large corporation as a buyer, but which he was not getting on well with. When they wanted to sign the contract, they kept knocking down the purchase price. So Father suggested he sold the factory to us, and using his charm, he somehow got an extra £20,000 off the lower price, then managed to agree the payment over a 3-year period. He's still trying to work out how he did that. And Silverhook Oil and Chemicals was born in 1994. Customers we are at the start of Unipart, MG Rover, and now we sell to Tyler and Volvo. There was one time I cannot forget when we won the contract to fill engine oil for Asda, 3 lorry of oil a week. A large filling machine was put in place and Father came to the factory just as the machine was set for testing. The machine was really fast and could pump out 3 litres of oil a second. Father was given the order of pushing the start button. I did say when you push the button, stand or back and move to the side. Another lesson learned is always bring a stair setter close to work. He could not stay away from work, and nearly every day, every week he turned up at around 11:30 to 2:30, always giving advice and talking to customers to the age of 89. He loved selling just for the pleasure. Father to I, do you want a partridge or pheasant? Just picked up a brace from the farmer's shoot, sold 12 to the local restaurant, £2 each. He got such a buzz of making and selling a product and the growth of Silver brand to many countries around the world. After his stroke, he still visited the factory when he could. When at home, even when in bed, and the weekend before his passing, the question was always, how are you and the boys? How are the girls? How's trade? Are the customers happy? And do you want a cup of tea?
I don't think people were clear when Peter was talking about the film line for the Asda, the pipe popped out as he pressed the button and the oil showered into the air. He must have probably thought for a minute, hang on, we've struck oil here, but you got absolutely covered. Yes, I'm going to, Michael is David's son, of course, and I'm going to talk about his love of sailing. In the same way we followed my father onto the market stall, we also followed him and my mother and her grandparents into the boats. And I'm going to start with a little short story. We sell very flimsy boats called international moths, and Peter was there. He's struggling to get his sail up, so my father, who was leapt into action, foot on the front deck, heave, sail went up, foot went down, cracked straight through the deck. It was hopping round. But sailing certainly does keep you fit. My father's favourite story, it's for the boys only, because I didn't realise he didn't intend to say this to the girls, was about he and his crew won the famous yachting trophy, the East Coast Cup Gold Cup. John, he managed to get a second in it. He lost it just on the line, but there we go. Not quite as good as my father, obviously, at sailing. Well, driving back home after a good celebratory drink, they were all called a bit short, him and the crew, and they didn't want to stop, so they used the cup. Well, Next year they competed again, but this time it was Ted Heath in Morning Cloud. He was the current Prime Minister. He won in Morning Cloud. Of course, they all drank champagne out of that cup. I'm sure they did before. Every year the Duke of Edinburgh invited a yacht crew to use his Royal Yacht Bloodhound, which was a 19.2 metre racing boat. Well, the Crouch was selected, so my father chose his crew and decided to enter a big race starting from Harwich. Well, the boat had never won a race, having been designed in 1936. It was a bit old-fashioned and built more for elegance and comfort rather than speed. Well, in sailing, there's a lot of judgment and also a big chunk of luck. Well, they won the race, and the picture of him with that big Iszatt smile on his face. It was on the deck, waving to there was an aeroplane coming overhead. He was waving at the camera, and that took pride of place in the Crouch Yacht Club for 50 years. The club closed recently, turning into houses, but fortunately my mother has a copy of that very famous picture leading up to the stairs on the left-hand side where we're allowed to visit next. We all used my father as an emergency crew. I'm not sure how old he was at the time, but whether it was sailing the boat over to West Mersey or up the Orwell in Ipswich, we'd happily just say, "Come on, Dad, get on board." Didn't actually realise he was getting on a bit at that time, and I've got a lovely picture which my brother Peter found of him in his older years sailing the boat round with us. He wasn't that happy sailing across in 1.5 metres of water over the mud banks littered with wrecks in a keelboat. It did worry him just a little bit. Well, he had his stroke, which prevented him from movement of his legs, unfortunately, and this may seem strange, but last summer, which amazingly, it seems ages ago before all this lockdown, on a warm sunny day, whilst little Victor there was playing with Joan on the floor of the toys, he actually said to me, he said, "Do you know what, I've reached the pinnacle of my life. I don't have any more worries. I've got absolutely everything I want. I don't have to worry about money or anything." And I'll tell you what, he was smiling and very happy. And I think that day was the day he might have actually decided he was going to take it a bit easier and retire. I'd like to take the opportunity of thanking Richard Attew. I think I've got the surname right. I've got, as the way is with the modern world, it's a lot of messages of condolence that are done through social media. I've got 72 comments. I'm not going to read them out, so don't worry. I've posted this picture of my father on the Facebook account. We've got, I'm not going to read them out, so don't worry. Richard Trumbull, who's disabled, sends some lovely, lovely memories. Thanks for all the memories. We miss you, but please all remember, even in his passing, we will live on in spirit. All take care and stay strong. We've got other relatives. James is a Dr. Harriet Stone. Richard and Tony Lewis sent a nice message. Paul and Joan Tunnicliffe, their daughter won the Olympic gold in the laser class, and unluckily they weren't selected this last time around. Alan Collette, thank you very much for a nice message. Teresa Browning, Helen Perkins from work. But I say I can't read them all out. There's 72 comments. Now, as I say, a picture says 1,000 words. You've got a nice picture there. This was my father's 90th birthday. We didn't know it was going to be a farewell. So I've decided, if a picture says 1,000 words, and of course a little short video will probably say a few minutes. Now, this is 2 songs long. Hopefully it's not too long for you. My mother's favourite song is the first one, and one that I think is appropriate. So just see if it works.
that's been done for us today. You can shed tears that Dave is gone, or you can smile because he lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he has left. You can remember him and only that he is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you can do what Dave would have done. Smile, even laugh, share a joke, and go on.
I'm reading now from the Bible, Psalm 23.